All right, how is everyone feeling that the finale is out in the world? How are you guys all feeling?
Awesome.
Oh, thank God.
So
Like
excited.
that I spoke first and I have the least to do.
I feel like we should start with Hillary to just ask her how this all happened.
I got involved when these two brilliant people right here reached out and said, yeah, you. Look at you. He's like, what, me? And said, hey, we're thinking about you and this show. And I'm like, tell me more. And they told me, as much as you can when you're a work in progress. And I said, I love it. When do we start? And they're like, in about 2 weeks. And I said, great. Well, I'll see you there.
Did you know there was going to be Melanie Linsky biting part of your body off?
I didn't. I didn't. But when I saw it, I went, yeehaw. We conveniently left that out.
Wasn't part of the pitch. Melanie, what was your reaction to reading that and being able to do it, to film that?
I was so excited that Hillary was coming on board, and I just hoped that she would be cool. I just was like, this is a really intense way to start. First of all, it was like half the script was just us talking across a table, and then the other half was rolling on the floor in a crazy fight. So thank God it went really well.
I mean, I still remember when Ashley pitched that arc and said, I said, when does Melissa go bad?
Yeah.
She said, not until after, Shauna feeds her part of her arm. And I said, wait, what?
Of course, naturally.
And I have to say that was the one moment in this entire 3 seasons that I've audibly gasped.
Me too.
When I
felt the
read
same.
something and just been immediately sick.
I'm surprised you got to this point. So that's a good, thing to say, because there's been a lot of crazy moments, and that was crazy that this was the first one.
Oh, it's real crazy.
It wasn't my first, but it was such a jaw-dropping moment for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so Warren, I want to talk to you about Jeff. I want to kind of dig into Jeff a little bit because he has so many layers. Yes, you can applaud and cheer. We love that. How he reacts to the chaos around him is so charming which is a weird thing to say, but it's true. I'm curious how you go about leaning into the many emotions that he has.
As honestly as I possibly can.
Yeah.
That's been the real hook for Jeff, is he's almost a proxy for the sane people who are hanging on to this story. He just wants to get to some familiar streets, and again in his life and find something whole, in himself and in his family, and reach that kind of ideal again, if it ever existed. And
How's that going?
He doesn't, what's that?
I said, how's that going?
Well, he doesn't have he's not quite equipped to do any of this. He's like a Labrador who wants to be a German Shepherd. And it's the struggle.
Yeah.
He doesn't think he's funny or anything. It's just the circumstances.
Well, I feel like Callie is also part of that because she has a moral compass, I would say, but this season kind of goes a little awry.
Yeah, I mean, things have shifted a little bit after the finale, especially, maybe. But I would agree. I think that definitely for the longest time on the show, Jeff and Callie, almost more so, have been a bit more grounded in reality. I think that Callie's been in the position of being the adult almost in some circumstances that we found ourselves in.
You're taking care of Jeff.
Yeah, I really enjoyed shooting a lot of scenes with you this season, and our dynamic has been so much fun and sweet. And also, yes, as things shift for Callie at the end of this season and what that journey was like, I'm intrigued myself, you guys. I am like, oh my goodness, where are we gonna go from here? But I personally can't wait to find out. It's been so exciting for me.
Why don't we just ask that end of the...
Yeah, right, we should.
There's a few people here who could answer.
But it's been so exciting for me, and I'm so curious. That's the word I've been using when people have asked me. I'm like, I'm so curious where we're going to go next.
I like that when the first group was out here that Jasmine was the one trying to get answers out of you, and now it's Tawny trying to get answers out of you. I just want to throw
Great
that out.
casting.
So
Just
funny.
such good casting.
Yeah.
All right, Melanie, obviously you are the third leg of this triangle with these two behind you, and are maybe part of the reason their characters are a little stressed. So how did you kind of dive into this season knowing what was happening with Shauna? Because she obviously went through something she really took a turn.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue it's always been there, just hidden under some layers of pretending everything's okay. I mean, we had a really good talk at the beginning of the season, and these guys told me that it was going to get very dark for Shauna, which I thought it already was. So I was like, okay, I didn't know quite what you meant. Could be more specific. Yes, taking bites out of people. But it was really interesting. It was fun to kind of, I feel like she's been so invested in keeping things locked up. And so it was fun reading the scripts to see how this version of Shauna was converging with Sophie's version and kind of becoming the same diabolical creature. But I do have to say, I really miss these guys. We didn't have very many scenes together by the end of the season. And I love my family. It's been one of the
thought you didn't
great
like us anyway.
joys of my career.
What did you say?
Yeah, sorry guys. I'll do better. We'll see each other again.
Sorry, Emily.
No, go
I'm
ahead.
just really interested to see how the story would continue in terms of what happens for Callie at the end of the season and what that might mean for our relationship. Like, where is that going to go? Ashley, Bart, Jonathan?
I feel attacked. I feel like the last cast left, we're like, we got him on the ropes. Just keep hammering him.
I agree with you, Sarah. I mean, to me, your dad has given you an act of love in letting you off the hook because he said you were scared.
I agree.
And you may internalize that and self-justify, or you may not really believe it. Because I think one of your secret fears is whether or not the dark impulses of your mother have been almost, if not genetically, then sort of like conditionally engineered inside you.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, Jonathan, because we shot that scene already, and that is exactly how I felt while we were shooting it. I felt like when Jeff told Callie that she was scared, there was a huge part of her that felt relief because she did, in fact, feel scared. And exactly what you said, her deepest fear of, but is it not that? Is it that this thing? Yeah. What Jonathan said, it was more eloquent.
Almost as if we planned it.
Almost. All right, Christina, Misty, she's very loyal, of course, but she's also very dangerous. And I'm curious if you ever think she fully grasps how far she's willing to go to keep this group intact.
I don't think that she ever sees it that way. I think that Misty's very pragmatic, and she was she took on this role in the wilderness as a child, and when she gets in the group and this dynamic, she takes that role on again without even thinking about it, and that has been who she's been for season 1, season 2. With season 3, before we started, I asked Ashley and Bart and Jonathan just to give me sort of a rough sketch of her emotional arc. And what they told me was that this season she was going to come out of that role just a little bit in terms of not being in so much denial about who her friends were and how they viewed her. And so that was a really interesting and fun and gratifying thing to do, because in the past it's been difficult for me, because you use so much of yourself and your own emotions, and you put yourself in the character's place, and then you react emotionally in those scenes. And it's been hard for me to do the things she does, where she's just in complete denial to all the nasty things, being the butt of the joke, all that kind of stuff. And then for this season, for her to sort of come awake and realize and sort of be aware of her anger and rage at being treated this way was really gratifying and fun, but also difficult, because if you play a character who's so in denial all the time, then to sort of measure that slow awareness and awakening, she starts cursing. And for me, it was just like, well, I really want to make sure she doesn't seem like a different character all of a sudden. So that took a lot of measure, I guess. And I think I made mistakes and then went back, but I had great guidance. So,
Yeah. And then from your guys' point of view, I mean, how did that must have impacted the writer's room as well, because you're also making a big shift in this character without changing who she is at her core. What was that process like?
I found it very cathartic because
Me too.
you want Misty to wake up.
Yeah.
And you throughout the first 2 seasons, she is being sort of used by the other characters, and then they're not really considering any of the consequences for Misty. And she's just so desperate to be a part of the group that she has blinders on. And I feel like that's a very relatable thing to be kind of telling yourself that everyone has the best intentions, and that you know the discomfort you sometimes feel in relationships that are maybe more transactional than you want them to be, it's fine. And to be able to take Misty and have her start to stand up for herself and start to say, hey, wait a second. Like, I'm not, one of my favorite lines this season is the voicemail that Misty leaves for Shauna when she says, I'm just going to say, fuck you, actually. And you're just like, yes, Misty. And I think it's a testament to Christina's performance that it feels cohesive. It doesn't feel like this is a different person. It feels like a person who is waking up and who is starting to understand that she has more agency and more value than maybe the people around her are giving her credit for. And again, in the writer's room, I look, this may come as a shock, but writers often feel like the underdogs. And I feel like everyone is just rooting for Misty, elder abuse aside. So
it happens.
It was
Sometimes you're mad. You feel rejected.
All right, Tani, let's talk a little bit about what Thais is going through.
Pick up my microphone. Yes, darling.
Thais has been, I would say, on such an interesting journey in the last couple seasons, but this time we got to see a little this really joyous of her in the beginning with her and Van, and then of course it went down.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of tap into that and being able to kind of take her to a new place?
This is a multiple part answer. First of all, we did have the talk. Everyone has the talk where you get your character arc for the season, and I was told that we were going to see a lot more of other Ty. So there was questions. I had so many questions. You know, what does Ty know? Does she have the same memories? Do they know the same things? Yes, they all know. They know that. So as an actor, I have to try and break it down and make it realistic for myself. So then it becomes like, oh, they're the same person. So in my mind, as I'm acting, it's like narcissism to the nth degree, where somebody creates something where they can use that to blame everything on, so that they don't need to take responsibility. It's never her fault. And so that's what I could be totally wrong. Ask them. This is how I approached it. I'm just like, they're the same person. She's so afraid of taking any responsibility for doing anything that she wants to do in life, that she sort of leans into this other thing that she could blame on, you know? And so there's that. That's the one part. The other part of it is Lauren, who's not here tonight, and I'm so sorry. She's sick. But she and I, at the beginning of the season, decided that we were just going to try and tell the best story of love that we could. And that's what we did. Every moment, every scene that we did, as crazy as it looked, was always from this place of, let's just love each other as deeply as we possibly can until it ends. And so that's what we did.
And then Melissa's there. tick, and then Melissa's there to change
miss
things
it.
up. I'm sure. I mean, do you guys want to comment on talk a little bit about that?
I mean, I think that the love story between Van and Thaisa is one that's been very central to the show. But each of them had their own arc. And I think that for Van, it was a story of, what is essentially the central thesis of the show, which is what are you willing to do to survive? And Van is a person, maybe unlike everyone else on the stage, who had a Rubicon that she wasn't willing to cross. And that was very much the story we wanted to tell, especially as a juxtaposition. I think it's an important story for that character. It really speaks to who that character is, that is a character who says, I'm not willing to do certain things. I just cannot do them, even if it means that I will not survive. And I think that was a story we were very interested in telling. And then it's a juxtaposition for some of these other characters who are willing to do almost anything to survive, which I think is also very powerful. And then with Thaisa, we really wanted to tell a story about somebody whose many defenses over the course of 3 seasons are stripped away. So in season 1, we find somebody who is putting everything behind them and only
Like
looking
a candy
forward.
shell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I think of first season. Like a
Exactly.
candy-coated shell.
It's about moving only in a forward direction, not even thinking about the past, and saying if I'm successful enough, if I'm ambitious enough, I can put that behind me. And then that is taken away from her. And then it becomes, okay, but I have this relationship. I have this love of my life. And the question we wanted to ask ourselves and the audience is what happens when that's taken away too? Who is Thaisa at her very core?
Oh my God, I can't wait to find out.
Well, and I also think, just to credit the writers, I think, and the actors, I think Van's ending is such a profoundly Yellowjackets ending, right? And to tip the cap that I'm not wearing to Hillary, I mean, just that scene, I remember being on set that day. I mean, just all of us had full body chills watching both Lauren and Hillary deliver those lines, because it just felt on so many levels, as Ashley is saying, like it embodied who these characters are because of who they were and how it permeates, the past into the present.
And the amazing thing about having this horrible ending, of this beautiful love story, be the beginning of what the fuck is going on here? That's crazy. I can't wait.
Hillary, how much of that backstory did you know? I mean, I know you had a meeting 2 weeks before, but I'm sure you can't be told that much in that much time. So
No, I think, but what really I think was the clincher for me was when they were saying, when you go through trauma and you try and move past trauma and you want to find normalcy and you go on that path, things trigger you. And you don't realize that there's still, I mean, when you have trauma like that, it's in your marrow, right? It's still in your cells. And I find that fascinating just in humans in general, like from 0, to like you can have trauma from 0 to 3 even, and you don't remember it, but somehow it stays in your body. And I find that to be an interesting thing to explore. And so when they were talking about that, I thought that that's a really, I look forward to seeing where that goes. There's so many facets of that. And I think that what happens right when Melanie, she bites my arm, that is the beginning of this shocking you back into something that you weren't even aware was in your past, except there was a moment when she says, when she feels someone's in the closet and is like, whoever the fuck you are, you're dealing with the wrong person. You get it. You get glimpses of it. And I love that, the gradations of finding those glimpses. But then I think when Van says, I wish I could kill you because it would take this away from me, it triggers all the things that they did. All of a sudden, she's like shaking with yeah. And then she really means it. Maybe, go ahead and kill me, because maybe it will. I mean, and then that triggers a whole other thing that triggers her to do something like that. And I think she's completely spinning out of control. Obviously,
And
it's not, well, it's not like I'm intentionally thinking, Melissa's intentionally thinking, well, at the end of this, I'm going to stab her. But it's just what happens when you have that trauma sitting there and then something triggers it. It's like, bam. And I just think it's so wonderfully rich with all the characters and all the places that can go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Go
I'm
ahead.
just going to say that those triggers, Hillary, are each other. And so they don't exist in isolation. They're not just clinically there. It's the alchemy, the dark alchemy, if you will, among the characters that really triggers that. And so I think Shauna can live in a self-imprisoned domestic life, pretending that everything is okay, until she can't. And often that's in her interactions with the other characters. Similarly, I think Melissa is having that occur to her in that scene.
Yeah, I totally agree with that,
Yeah. So something I was curious about, it kind of is left open whether or not Melissa was the one, if she was actually messing with Shauna, if she cut her brakes, we know Misty was the one who locked her in the freezer.
That was my question.
But
the
was
whole,
Melissa messing with her?
remember, guys, I was like, I just need to know because it intentionally, like when I'm saying this, did I or didn't I? And they're like, we don't know. And I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to make a choice and hope that it's the right choice.
Well, clearly it worked because we don't know. I mean, as an audience, we still don't know. Go ahead.
I mean, well, no, we know, but I mean, I don't think you actually want to know. I think you want to know, but the reality is it's gonna, it's
You
like.
have said that to me so many times.
I know,
Art.
yeah, no, I'm very consistent.
Like, do you really
It's
want to
like,
know?
It's like, go to the Magic Castle, see the thing, and believe it's magic. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to, take the magic kind of out of the room? And like, I think that your interpretation, like, see, here's the thing about life, okay? Is that
I love you guys.
You don't get to know. And like how you kind of reconcile with that kind of unknown and kind of with that mystery is like what this show is kind of about.
Melanie, do you think that Melissa was messing with Shauna, or do you think that maybe Shauna is just really losing it?
I also made a decision. Sometimes as actors, we do have to know, by the way.
Yeah. Oh,
We
yeah.
have to
Yeah. I will tell
We
you.
can't play both sides of it. Yeah. Okay, I have a lot of questions then, if you have time after this. Great. I didn't think Melissa was. What did you think? It's more a question for Hillary. I didn't think, but for me, when Shauna finds the letter under the fridge, it's like a moment where she's like, "Oh God, I'm crazy." She's like, "What have I done?" And then, typical Shauna fashion, she's like, "Oh, too late. It happened." But she acts before she thinks. She just does something before she's really processed it. And I think she's found evidence of the fact that she's done it again. And then she was like, well, time to lean into that, I guess. Like, it's too hard for her to own her mistakes, because then that means like going back and back and back and owning so many mistakes and having to, think about the part you played in the worst traumas of your life, and it's too much for her. She's just like, I'd just rather move ahead and hopefully there won't be another mistake. There will be.
And the way I chose to play it was, I was like, well, if I'm not going to know black or white, I'm going to choose to believe that I didn't do any of that. And if it turns out to be something different, you know how you believe your own lies?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I just really believed it so long that it'll be a shock to me too.
That's smart.
I think that's the key, though, right? I mean, all joking aside, the show is about the lies we tell ourselves. And Melissa did write the note. Melissa believes, I think, on some level, that she did it to free the other women from their past. But to me, the key is when Melissa talks about how, because look, you can become a state senator, you can fake your own death and take on another identity. You can become, a stay-at-home mom and put aside all of your dreams for your career. None of it is working for any of them. And I think that when Melissa says, I was fine, and then I started having nightmares, and then the nightmares started happening during the day, I think that as much as she wanted to believe that she sent the tape and the letter as a form of liberation, of forgiveness, of letting go, I think that none of them can. And I don't know that any of them truly want to. And I think that that's the crux of the entire situation for all of them.
Well, there's a line from the very first season. We made the pilot separate from the season, and there was a line that the writers spoke when they were pitching out to Showtime and to us what they wanted to do, and it was that, like, even though what happened in the wilderness was horrible, beyond imagining, and so harrowing and dark and traumatic, each of these characters in their own way is kind of reaching and fumbling blindly back to that feeling in terms of just how alive they felt in that moment.
And Ashley, you just reminded me I remember you saying that, and I feel like that's an interesting thing too with humans is when you have something that has formed, especially in those formative years of your life, that is traumatic, it is what you know. It does become your normal. And so you do seek it out in strange ways without even realizing it. And that was another thing you guys talked about that I found super fascinating in character development. And I remember something else that I did, played a while ago, but that always stays with me with characters is like, a therapist said, would you be okay if there wasn't any drama? Like, are you okay with that? Or are you actually in here talking about this because it's the way you want your life to be? And I think that that's such an interesting thing because a lot of people they like thrive on it, and if they were normal, then they'd be kind of bored. And I thought that was really an interesting thing when you guys talked to me.
Well, with peace comes the fact that you have to face yourself, who you really are. And so what I've always loved is how active all these characters are, because that is, for me and what I know about people, you run from things and you run from emotions and you run from that peace if what faces you there is terrifying and shameful.
That's so interesting. Apropos of that, a neuroscientist friend of mine once told me something that's always stuck with me, which is that when you remember something on a neurological level anyway, please, if there's neurologists in the, don't call me on this, but you only remember the last time you remember it. And so it starts to go through this form of attrition. But I would suggest that when our characters are together, that becomes less possible. And that's, I think, a catalyst for drama.
Yeah.
They're good.
That's all fine and
Please
dandy.
visit
but
my office
what about
in Santa
Jeff's
Monica.
drama?
I
What about
charge by
Jeff's
the hour.
drama, you guys?
All right. The last thing I want to say is I think that this season 3 does feel a bit, I feel like a bit darker psychologically when it comes to kind of just what everybody went through in both timelines. But I think in the adult timeline is even more. What inspired that turn from 2 to 3 into the kind of tone of 3?
I find it fascinating. You think 3 is darker than 2.
I don't know. I felt like that. Did you guys not feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to have more fun, I think. It was like, let's
fun.
make this the light one,
I mean,
Shauna bit off someone's arm. This is not the light one.
you don't find
But
that
doesn't
fun?
that make sense?
A piece.
I think
I'm sorry. A piece. You're right.
just a little bit. I mean, it was always by design. This show was meant to start in a place that felt like just survival in that sort of fun, voyeuristic, adventurous way. And we would kind of talk amongst ourselves early on that survival was the easy part, in terms of just life or death. That There's a quote that we put on the chalkboard this season when the girls are in the cave and they're having these sort of fever dreams, and it's that of all the ways to lose a person, death is the kindest. And I think that we wanted to dig in on this show of it was a great opportunity, just the premise, the sort of airplane or elevator, airplane, good Lord, the elevator pitch of, girls in a plane crash and they're trying to survive. It was an opportunity to look at what happens to people when all the masks you have to put on in your everyday life are stripped away. And who are you when you're not being told how to act and how to be? Who are you at your deepest core when you can be anything, you can act any way you want? And that's what's fun about writing these characters. And in the present day, they're coming back to that, to terrible consequences. So that's I think that's ultimately what drives us as writers, and I hope it's what drives our amazing cast as actors, is to dig into that. Just who are we fundamentally when all the niceties are stripped away and when we don't have to pretend anymore.
Absolutely. Thank you guys all so much for being here. Thank you all for being here.